Red Hollow, New Mexico Territory, 1887. Evening sank low over the town, turning the dust in the street the color of dried blood. Behind the Red Hollow saloon, the lamps threw a weak yellow spill that never quite reached the alley. In that half-dark, Rose Bennett hit the ground hard enough to knock the breath out of her. Her dress tore at the shoulder, her cheeks swollen, her hair loose and sticking to sweat on her face. Beneath the pain, a single thought beat against her ribs. This wasn't the first time a man used a debt to claim her. Jed Brogan's hand closed around her arm again. Hot, mean, unyielding. He yanked her up, just to throw her back. "Get up," he slurred. "Ain't done talking, girl." Inside the saloon, the piano stumbled through a tune, drowned by laughter and breaking glass. Back here, behind barrels and rubbish, the sounds came thin, like they belonged to another town. Rose curled an arm around her ribs where he'd already kicked her. She tasted blood, metal and dust, and heard her own voice slip out before she meant to let it. "Please, don't hit me again. I'm not just something you trade." Jed barked an ugly laugh. "That's where you're wrong." His boot drove into her side. Not the hardest he could, but enough to turn her vision white. She folded over, fingers digging into grit. Near the wall, two men leaned in shadow, cigarettes glowing at their lips. One shifted, ready to step in. The other caught his arm and whispered, "Leave it, Tom. Bart's business. Girl signed. Ain't our concern." The saloon door creaked open. Light spilled out for half a heartbeat. Mrs. Dawes stood framed in the doorway, her silhouette cut sharp in smoke and lamplight. Her eyes flicked over Rose on the ground, over Jed's raised fist. "She's loud tonight," she said flatly. "Just remindin' her what ink means," Jed growled without turning. The door shut. The bolt slid into place. Final. Darkness rushed back in. Rose pushed herself onto one elbow, breath coming in broken pulls. Her hands shook, not from cold but from something deeper. She remembered the first time she'd signed her name in this town. Board and lodging, Bart Kellen had smiled. Now the words felt like a noose around her throat. Jed grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her head back. Pain shot down her neck. Stars spun above, thin, uncaring. "You think you're better than this?" he hissed. "You're a mark on Bart's ledger, nothing more." "Jed," her voice cracked. "You'll kill me." He hauled her upright until her toes barely scraped the ground. She saw his face up close. Broken veins, sour sweat, anger with nowhere to go. "Maybe that's what it takes," he muttered. "Then the next girl'll learn faster." He dropped her. She slammed the wall, slid down the planks, ears ringing. A horse clopped past in the street beyond. No one turned in. No one ever did. Rose dragged in a breath that burned. "I signed for work," she whispered. "Not for this." Jed sneered. "Paper don't care how you feel. Paper says you stay till Bart says you're done." He stepped closer. His shadow swallowed her. Rose flinched before his hand even rose, her bones learning the pattern. Her mind flicked to a memory she'd buried. Her father at a kitchen table in Missouri, a worn silver coin between his fingers. I won't let them take you, Rosie. That coin was gone now. So was he. Jed's fist rose again. The men by the crates looked away, pretending blindness kept them clean. Here, Jed growled. The only thing that matters is what the paper says you are. How can a piece of paper know me? She breathed. He didn't answer. His fist began to fall. The ground trembled beneath her palm. A new sound cut through the alley, iron shoes striking hard, sliding as a horse reined in fast. Dust rolled past the mouth of the passage. A tall shape filled the narrow entrance, wide shoulders, low-brimmed hat. His horse snorted, sensing whiskey and fear. Jed tightened his grip on Rose's hair, then loosened. She blinked through pain, squinting at the silhouette. She couldn't see his face, only that someone had stopped. Someone had chosen to turn in. The men by the crates straightened. Jed spat toward the figure. Move along, he snapped. This alley's taken. The stranger swung down from the saddle. His boots hit dirt with a slow, heavy thud. He stepped forward, his shadow stretching until it touched Rose's hands. She felt it brush her bruised knuckles, and something inside her, something small, stubborn, flickered. He hadn't spoken a word, but the night held its breath, waiting to learn what kind of man had decided to walk into this darkness, and whether he'd walk out again with blood on his hands or with someone else's life in them. The man stepped fully into the alley, dust sliding off his coat like he'd carried half the desert on his back. His hat cast a deep shadow over his eyes, but Rose could see the set of his jaw, steady, carved from something harder than the night. He didn't reach for a gun, didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Jed Brogan the way a man looks at trouble he's already decided to end. That's enough, he said. His voice was low, quiet enough to force everyone to listen. Jed stiffened, fist still hovering. The two men by the crates shifted, glancing between Jed and the newcomer, unsure which direction the night might break. Who the hell are you? Jed spat. This ain't your fight. The man's boots moved toward Rose, slow, measured. Her breath caught, not in fear, but in something sharper. Disbelief that someone had stepped between her and a beating for the first time in months. He stopped beside her, one foot planted near her trembling hands. He didn't look down, didn't touch her. He faced Jed as if Rose were already under his protection simply because he stood there. She's done taking hits from you, he said. Jed barked a laugh, cruel, wild, but Rose saw it, a flicker of uncertainty behind his eyes. She's Bart's girl, Jed snapped. Ain't you heard? She owes the saloon. Paper says she's ours till the debt's paid. The stranger's jaw tensed. Paper don't make a man, he replied. And it damn sure doesn't give you permission to beat a woman half to death. Jed stepped forward, puffed by the silent watchers behind him. You think you got a say? You don't even know who owns her. I know enough, the stranger said calmly. I heard her cry for help. Something inside Rose stung at that, because she didn't expect anyone to hear her, or to care if they did. Jed waved a hand toward the saloon. "Go ask Bart. He'll tell you the same." She signed. The stranger's eyes finally dropped to Rose, not with pity, not with fear, just a steady gaze, measuring her pain, deciding what needed doing. "You signed?" he asked softly. Rose swallowed hard. "They made me," she rasped. "The door was locked. They said if I didn't—" She glanced at Jed's fists. "I wouldn't leave the room alive." Jed's grin cracked wide. Lies. She signed just fine. The saloon door banged open. Bart Kellen stepped out. Vest sharp, eyes cold as pre-dawn desert. A folded paper hung from his fingers, county seal pressed in the corner. "Well," Bart drawled, "looks like we've got ourselves an audience." The stranger didn't turn. "Let the girl go." "Can't," Bart replied. He lifted the contract between two fingers. "She owes months of work. Unless—" His eyes slid over the stranger's dust-worn coat. "You feel like paying it off." Jed chuckled. "Buy her if you want her so bad." The stranger didn't rise to it. His stare locked with Bart's, and the whole alley stilled. Rose's heart thudded painfully. She didn't want anyone paying for her. Didn't want to drag another soul into this pit. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, don't." But the stranger crouched beside her, close enough for her to see the lines in his face. Rugged, quiet, carved with loss, and a restrained fury that wasn't aimed at her. "You hurt bad?" he asked. Rose nodded, barely. He rose and faced Bart again, shoulders squared, breath steady. "All right," he said. "How much?" Bart named the amount. High. Higher than any decent man should pay for another's freedom. The stranger didn't argue. He reached into his coat, pulled a worn leather pouch, and counted out the money with slow, unwavering hands. Jed scowled. "You're making a mistake." The stranger ignored him. "Time 5 hums." Bart pocketed the money and held out the folded contract. "She's yours now." The stranger didn't take it. "She belongs to herself," he said. "I'm just getting her out of your dirt." He walked back to Rose and held out his hand. Not grabbing, not forcing, just offering. Her fingers trembled, then reached for his. He lifted her gently, steadying her when her knees buckled. "Can you walk?" he murmured. "Yes," she breathed. "You're coming with me tonight," he said. "You're safe now." Rose turned away so the men couldn't see her eyes fill, but she nodded. Jed spat. Bart sneered. The watchers melted into shadow. The stranger stepped close, voice low enough only she could hear. "Name's Isaiah Cole." The name hit her with a weight she couldn't explain. But something shifted inside. Like a rope around her chest loosened one small notch. As he guided her toward his horse, her gaze drifted once to the saloon door where her misery began. Isaiah followed her eyes. Don't look back, he said quietly. Not tonight. The horse snorted, dust rising around their boots as he lifted her into the saddle. Isaiah swung up behind her, one steady arm keeping her balanced. Jed shouted something after them, but Isaiah didn't turn. He nudged the horse forward, carrying Rose out of the alley, out of the town lights, into the open dark where the desert wind tasted like the chance she thought she'd never have again. But as they rode, a tremor of dread settled low in her stomach. Because if Bart had let her go that easily, he wasn't done with either of them. Night settled over Coles Creek like a blanket pulled slow across the sky. The wind carried a colder edge out here, the smell of juniper and distant rain drifting in the dark. Isaiah lifted Rose down from the horse as gently as if she'd been made of cracked glass. Her legs shook the moment her boots touched dirt, but his hand at her elbow steadied her. The ranch house stood small, built of dark timber worn smooth by years of wind. A single window glowed faintly, warm as a held breath. Isaiah pushed open the door and let her step inside first. Quiet. No shouting, no music, no men watching her like stock in a market. Only the soft crackle of a fire and the hush of a lived-in room. A folded blanket on a chair. A kettle steaming over the flames. Rose felt her throat tighten at the simple neatness of it. Isaiah set another log on the fire. Sparks rose caught in the dim light. Sit wherever you can breathe, he said. She lowered herself slowly, every bruise waking with the movement. Her hands curled tight in her lap, still shaking. Isaiah poured hot water steeped with a few leaves and handed it to her without meeting her eyes, as if giving her space was part of helping. Drink slow. Heat'll settle you. She sipped. Warmth spread through her chest, loosening something that had been locked tight since the alley. For the first time that night, she felt inside her own body again. You live alone? She whispered. Yes, he said. Then softer. It's been that way for a long time. His voice carried the tired calm of someone who'd held more weight than he ever spoke about. Firelight brushed his jaw, the small scar at his temple, the worn tired in his eyes. I shouldn't be here, Rose murmured. I'll only bring more trouble. You didn't bring it, Isaiah said. It followed you. No blame, just truth. And somehow, that hurt worse than Jed's boots. Her gaze drifted to the mantel. A single silver ring hung from a worn leather cord, surface scratched by years of touch, something held with reverence. Whose ring is that? She asked softly. Isaiah hesitated. His shoulders shifted, like he'd been caught looking somewhere he tried not to go. It was my wife's, he said. Rose's breath hitched. Was? She died 3 years ago. Wrong place, wrong men. Too much whiskey involved. His voice thinned. Town said they couldn't find who did it. The fire cracked sharp. Rose flinched. I'm sorry, she whispered. Isaiah nodded once, jaw tight, like he'd heard those words too many times, and none had ever reached the place that hurt. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, The quiet between them felt heavy, not cruel. Heavy like two wounds sitting close enough to feel each other breathe. Rose touched her bruised cheek. The pulse beat beneath her fingers. "I've been beaten before," she murmured. "But tonight, it felt different, like something was ending." Isaiah studied her, steady, grounding, never pity. "It didn't end," he said. "You're here." Her eyes warmed, stung. She blinked them back. "You shouldn't have paid for me," she whispered. "I didn't buy you," he said. "I paid to stop them." "But Bart will come for your land," she said. "He'll blame you." Isaiah's gaze drifted to the window, the dark stretch of ranch beyond. "Bart's blamed me for breathing since the day I rode into this town," he said quietly. "Doesn't change what needed doing." His calm unsettled her. Not harsh, but steady in a way she hadn't felt in years. The flames dipped low, shadows folded across the floor. Outside, wind pressed softly against the walls. Rose held her cup tighter. "You don't know something about me," she whispered. "If you did, you might not have brought me here." Isaiah didn't move. "Then tell me when you can." She shook her head. "Not tonight." "Fine." Their eyes met across the fire. His calm, hers stormed with guilt she couldn't yet name. The room breathed warm and safe, yet something in Rose's chest twisted with fear that safety this quiet couldn't last. Outside, a horse cried out in the far pasture, sharp enough to slice the stillness. Rose's breath caught. "Did you hear that?" Isaiah rose in one fluid motion, listening. Wind swept against the walls. The night held its breath. Something, someone, was out there. Dawn crept over Coles Creek in a pale haze, washing the ranch in soft gold that didn't quite warm the cold inside Rose's chest. She stepped out of the cabin slowly, one hand pressed to her ribs, drawing in air that still tasted faintly of last night's fear. The horses stirred in their stalls, snorting clouds of breath into the crisp morning. Isaiah was already there, sleeves rolled, pitchfork in hand. He worked with a quiet focus, rhythm steady, like chores were the only thing keeping his thoughts in place. Rose stepped to the nearest stall and laid a hand on the mare's neck. The horse leaned into her touch, as if recognizing something gentle beneath all her bruises. "You do that well," Isaiah said without looking over. "Most folks flinch around animals when they're hurt." Rose smoothed the mare's coat with slow, familiar strokes. "I grew up around horses," she murmured. "Feels like they're the only ones who ever listen." Isaiah paused, studying her face. She tried to hold his gaze, but it was too searching, too honest. She stepped away, pretending to check the feed bucket. "You slept any?" he asked. "A little." "Pain bad?" She shrugged. "I've had worse." Isaiah set the pitchfork aside and leaned against the stall door, wiping sweat from his brow. "You don't have to pretend here," he said quietly. The words brushed something raw in her, something she'd kept sealed tight for months. She looked down at her hands, scraped knuckles, dirt beneath her nails, skin faintly trembling, pretending was all she'd done for months. The mare nudged her shoulder, gentle, patient. The touch steadied her long enough for her to breathe. Isaiah stepped inside the cabin to fetch a coil of rope, leaving her alone in the quiet morning. The moment his footsteps faded, Rose reached into her jacket pocket, fingers brushing the worn, folded paper she'd carried so long it felt like part of her bones. Her stomach tightened. She pulled it out. The edges were soft, creased from being opened and closed too many times. A faint stain, rainwater or maybe tears, marked the corner. She unfolded it slowly, and there it was. Her name, her signature, the county seal pressed into the paper, and above it, a statement she had never believed, only repeated. The memory crashed into her. A man of color dragged through the dust of Black Creek, the mob shouting, someone shoving the paper toward her. Sign. You saw him near the barn. Just sign, girl. Don't make trouble. Her shaking hand, her voice gone. The rope thrown over the branch anyway. A quiet sob slipped out of her. Unintentional, sharp as a cut. If he knew, she whispered, voice trembling, he'd never let me near his door again. She pressed the paper to her chest, then folded it sharply, tucking it deep into her pocket again. Guilt throbbed hot beneath her ribs. When she turned, Isaiah stood in the doorway, arms crossed loosely, expression unreadable. She stiffened. You all right? He asked. Yes, she lied. His eyes held hers longer than they should have. Long enough she feared he could see the truth trembling beneath her skin. Finally, he nodded and stepped aside. We've got company, he said. Her heart clenched. What kind? He jerked his chin toward the horizon. Dust rising, hoofbeats, multiple, moving fast. She stepped closer to him instinctively. Isaiah shifted slightly, placing himself just half a step in front of her. Don't jump to fear yet, he murmured. Could be nothing. But the look in his eyes, sharp, measuring, shoulders readying, told her he didn't believe his own words. Rose clutched the edge of her coat, feeling the crinkle of the folded paper inside. One more lie. Time 300 pounds. One more thing he didn't know. The riders drew closer, sun flashing on metal. She felt the truth rise in her throat, choking her. If this was Bart's doing, if this was about the debt, Isaiah would pay the price she'd been running from. She whispered, barely sound at all. I should have told you sooner. But the hoofbeats drowned the words as the riders came into view. The riders slowed as they reached the split-rail fence. Dust rolled around their horses' hooves, settling over the grass like fine ash. Sheriff Warren Hale rode at the front, his badge catching the morning light with a cold, sharp glint that made Rose take half a step back without meaning to. Isaiah didn't move. He stood square and steady, one hand resting lightly on the fence rail, the other hanging relaxed near his side. Not near a gun, just near enough to himself to show he wasn't afraid. The sheriff lifted his chin. Cole, Isaiah nodded once. Sheriff. Rose kept close to his shoulder, small, tense, her heart hammering against the folded paper in her pocket. Warren's gaze passed over her bruised face. Something flickered there. Sympathy, maybe, drowned under a heavy layer of duty, or the version of duty this town allowed him. You took someone from Bart Kellen's property last night, Warren said. She's not property, Isaiah replied. That's not what the contract says. Warren reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a crisp, perfect sheet stamped with the county seal. Rose's stomach twisted. She knew that kind of paper. Rose Bennett owes Bart Kellen 2 years' service for unpaid debt, Warren read aloud. Signed, witnessed, recorded. Rose flinched at her own name. Strange seeing yourself written like a possession. Isaiah didn't look at the paper. I saw what Bart did to her. That doesn't cancel the contract, Warren said. It cancels his right to call it work. Warren exhaled, shifting in his saddle. Look, Cole, I don't like what Bart does. Half the town doesn't. But the law's the law, and the judge ain't here to sort it today. So I'm asking plain. Hand her over. Isaiah's jaw tightened. No. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Not angry, but recognizing the truth. Isaiah wasn't bluffing. Wasn't stalling. Wasn't weighing cost. He'd already made his choice. The deputy beside Warren shifted, brushing the butt of his revolver. Isaiah didn't take the bait. His voice stayed level. She's under my roof. That makes her my responsibility. If Bart wants to claim otherwise, he can come himself. Warren looked past Isaiah to the cabin, then to Rose. You know he will, he said, with more men than last night. Rose swallowed. Her hands were cold despite the rising sun. The paper in her pocket seemed to burn against her ribs. You're forgetting something, Cole, the sheriff added. He tapped the contract. Bart doesn't just own her debt. He owns your mortgage, too. Rose's breath caught. The world tilted sideways for a moment. Isaiah didn't flinch. I know. Warren lowered his voice. If you keep her, Bart'll push till he breaks you. He'll take this land. Every acre. Isaiah finally turned his head. Not toward Warren, but toward Rose. She felt that look like a steady hand placed over her heart. Not accusing. Not doubting. Choosing. You should let me go, Rose whispered. This ranch is all you have. Isaiah shook his head once. You were almost killed because no one stepped in. I'm not adding myself to that list. Something inside her cracked. Thin, fragile, but real. Warren sighed. I'm giving you until sundown to turn her over. After that, Bart'll come with paper men, and the right to claim you're harboring stolen property. Isaiah didn't answer. The sheriff gathered his reins. I'm sorry, Cole. Truly. A pause. Bart plays dirty. Watch your back. The riders turned, hooves thudding down the long road. Dust rose behind them, swallowing their shapes one by one. When silence finally settled, Rose spoke in a breath. You'll lose everything. Isaiah looked out over his land. The fences he'd built, the barn he'd repaired, the horses grazing by the creek. Then he looked back at her, eyes steady as the mountains behind him. Land can be rebuilt, he said. A life can't. His calm terrified her more than Bart ever could, because nothing about her was worth losing a home for. Rose stepped back, arms tight. There's something you don't know about me. Something that'll make this worse. Isaiah waited, but the words jammed in her throat, thick with shame. I'll tell you soon, she whispered. Isaiah nodded, accepting that without pushing. But when the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of dust rising again from town, Rose felt the truth clawing up her ribs. Soon might already be too late. The road into Red Hollow felt longer than it had the night before. Isaiah drove the wagon with a slow, deliberate hand, reins loose but steady. Rose sat beside him, wrapped in his spare coat, bruises darkening in the morning light. Neither spoke. The wheels creaked over hard earth, and the silence between them grew heavier with every mile. Red Hollow appeared through a shimmer of dust. Shacks, storefronts, the small church steeple rising above them all. As they passed the churchyard, Rose's gaze caught on the crooked wooden crosses behind the building, most unmarked. One carried a single carved phrase, "Unknown colored man." Her breath stuttered. She tore her eyes away, but the memory surged anyway. The lynching, the crowd, the rope, the forced signature. Isaiah noticed the way her shoulders tightened. You don't have to look, he said quietly. But she already had. They rolled past the church and toward the saloon's back stairs. People slowed their steps as the wagon passed, whispering, staring. Trouble's brewin'. Girl's back with that rancher. Bart ain't gonna like this. Rose shrank into the coat, but Isaiah, he didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he was used to being watched. Inside the saloon, the air was thick with smoke and old whiskey, lamps still burning though it was barely midday. Bart Kellen sat upstairs in his office, legs crossed, vest crisp, hair slicked to one side. He smiled when he saw them, a smile without warmth. Well, well, Bart drawled. Look who's crawled back. Isaiah didn't sit. Neither did Rose. We're here for the papers, Isaiah said. Bart raised an eyebrow. Which ones? The girl's contract? Your mortgage? He stepped to the steel safe beneath a mounted deer head and tapped it lightly. Everything important to this town lives in here. Isaiah's voice stayed calm. Show us. Bart spun the combination lock. Metal clicked. The safe opened. Inside, neat stacks of documents, deeds, loans, employment contracts. Then he pulled out 2 items. Rose felt her pulse drop. The first, her contract, marked with her hesitant signature. The second, Isaiah's mortgage, interest numbers higher than she remembered from the sheriff's copy. Bart leafed through the pages like a man reading gossip. Tough situation, Cole. You take the girl, you lose the ranch. You give her back, maybe you keep it. Depends how generous I'm feeling. Rose spoke before she could stop herself. Why us? Why not leave him alone? Bart laughed. Because he's got something I want. Land? Isaiah asked. Creek water, Bart said. Best on this side of the territory. Everyone wants it, even the law. Bart set both papers on the desk and tapped them with 2 fingers. So, what's it gonna be? Rose felt Isaiah's stillness like a blow. He was choosing between her life and everything he'd built. Her throat tightened. Isaiah, She wanted to confess everything. The guilt, the false statement, the man who died because of her silence. But the words tangled, choking her. Isaiah spoke instead. I don't cut deals with men who beat women. Bart's polite smile dropped. Then you're a fool. Isaiah took Rose by the arm, firm, not rough, guiding her toward the door. We're done here, he said. Bart leaned back. You'll regret that. Thunder rumbled far beyond town. A dry wind swept Main Street, stirring dust into spirals around their feet. Rose looked back at the saloon window. Bart watched them go, eyes narrowed, not angry, calculating. A man already planning his next move. Outside, Isaiah helped her into the wagon. Rose hesitated, gripping the side. Isaiah, she whispered, if something happens because of me, times 700 pounds. His gaze met hers, steady, unwavering. It's already happening, but none of it is your fault. The wind picked up again, stronger. Dark clouds piled on the horizon, a storm brewing. And somewhere behind them, a man closed the door to his office and whispered to Jed, tonight, we finish it. Rose felt the air shift, heavy, charged. Something terrible was coming. The sky turned the color of rust as the sun bled out behind the hills. By the time Isaiah and Rose reached Coles Creek Ranch, the wind had begun to whip the dust sideways, sliding through every crack of the barn, every loose board of the cabin. It wasn't a quiet wind. It hissed, clawed, carried the dry taste of trouble. Isaiah worked fast, securing the gate, tying down the feed barrels, checking lanterns before the storm swallowed what little light was left. Rose followed without being asked, pulling at ropes with shaking hands, her hair whipping across her bruised cheek. You should stay inside, Isaiah said. She shook her head. Not while you're out here. The wind surged harder, pushing a curtain of red dust across the yard. Somewhere beyond it, faint, but growing closer, came the thudding of hooves. Several horses. Coming fast. Isaiah stopped moving. Rose's pulse stumbled. They're here. Figures emerged from the dust like shadows stepping out of smoke. Jed Brogan led them, jaw clenched, hat pulled low. Behind him, 4 more men, armed, drunk enough or angry enough not to care which was which. Jed smirked when he saw Rose. Thought you could run. Bart wants his property back. Isaiah stepped between them, steady, tall, unmoving. She's not your property. Jed spat into the dirt. Law says different. The men fanned out, their shapes blurring as dust swirled thick around them. One lit a torch, lifted it high. The wind fed the flame until it roared bright. Rose felt her heart stop. Isaiah! But the torch was already flying, arcing through the storm like a burning comet, before it crashed against the barn. Dry wood caught instantly, flames racing upward, hungry, gleeful, alive. No! Isaiah ran toward the barn, throwing his coat across his mouth as heat blasted against him. The horses! Let him burn, Jed shouted. We only need the girl. Someone grabbed Rose's arm, yanking her back. She kicked, twisted, but the hand tightened in her hair, dragging her down into the storm. Dust choked her throat. Fire painted everything orange and violent. Let me go, she screamed. The man hauling her only laughed. Breath thick with whiskey. Inside the barn, a horse screamed. The kind of sound that split bone and heart. Isaiah slammed his shoulder against a burning beam, forcing it aside long enough to reach the stall doors. Flames tore through his sleeves. Sparks burned his shirt. He shoved each gate open, shouting at the terrified horses until they bolted into the storm, disappearing into the dark. The heat drove him back. He stumbled into the yard, coughing, face streaked with soot. Through the blur of smoke, he saw Rose pinned, Jed's men closing around her like wolves around a calf. Get away from her, Isaiah roared. Jed laughed. Or what? You ain't got nothing left to fight with. Isaiah stepped forward, but the sandstorm twisted around him, cutting visibility to shreds. A gun clicked beside Rose's ear, and then another voice, sharp, young, trembling but aimed true. Let her go. The dust thinned, just enough for Rose to see him. Eli Turner, barely 20, the youngest of Bart's crew, the one who always looked away when things got ugly. He stood behind Jed, pistol raised, hands shaking. Eli! Jed barked. What the hell are you doing? Eli swallowed. His voice cracked, but didn't break. I'm not part of this. Not tonight. The man holding Rose hesitated, loosening his grip just enough for her to breathe. Jed stared at the boy, stunned. Put that gun down. Eli didn't. I won't, he said. I owe Cole my life. I'm not watching him lose it. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Fire roaring behind them, dust twisting around them. Isaiah bleeding smoke, Rose trembling in a stranger's grip. Then Jed moved. He lunged for Eli. Isaiah shouted Rose's name, and the storm swallowed them all. The last thing Rose saw before the dust blinded her was Jed's hand closing around Eli's wrist, and the knife at Jed's belt glinting red in the firelight. The storm swallowed sound, swallowed light, swallowed sense. Dust scraped Rose's eyes raw as she stumbled backward, freed only because Eli's shout had broken the grip on her. Shapes lunged and twisted in the blur, shadows fighting shadows, the fire behind them turning every movement into a flicker of orange and black. Jed roared first. He slammed into Eli, knocking the young man to his knees. Eli's gun skidded across the dirt, swallowed instantly by the storm. Jed grabbed him by the shirt, fury burning through the dust. You turn on me, boy? Eli struggled, but Jed was bigger, meaner, fueled by whiskey and rage. Rose tried to move toward them, but her legs buckled from fear and exhaustion. Isaiah reached them first. He came out of the storm like a dark shape carved from earth itself, breathing hard, clothes scorched, eyes burning with something deeper than anger. Jed barely had time to turn before Isaiah slammed into him, driving him away from the boy. They hit the ground together. Jed swung wild. Isaiah blocked one blow, then another, but the third caught him in the ribs. The fourth tore at his coat. Rose screamed his name, but the wind shredded her voice and flung it into the dark. Jed yanked the knife from his belt. Isaiah reacted too slow. The blade drove into his side, deep, brutal, meant to maim. A harsh breath tore from Isaiah's throat. He staggered, hand flying to the wound. "No!" Rose's voice broke. Isaiah didn't fall. He grabbed Jed's wrist, twisted until the knife dropped. Then he threw Jed into the dirt with a force born of something old and buried. Jed choked on dust, scrambling for breath. But the damage was done. Blood spread down Isaiah's shirt, dark and heavy in the firelight. Rose stumbled toward him. "Isaiah, times 600 hums." Before she could reach him, a gust of wind ripped through the yard, hot with smoke. Sparks spat across the ground. Something glinted near Isaiah's feet, something small and silver. His necklace had snapped. The wedding ring, the last piece of Hannah, had fallen into the burning mud. Flames licked at it, blackening one side, warping the thin band. Rose dropped to her knees without thinking. She reached into the hot grit, grabbed the ring, ignoring the sting. When she lifted it, the metal smoked in her palm. One side melted, the engraving nearly gone. Isaiah looked at the ruined ring in her trembling hand. For a moment, everything fell away. The storm, the fire, the shouting. He whispered, voice rough, Maybe it's time it burned." Rose felt her throat close, painfully. She wanted to speak, anything. But the storm hit again, and the moment shattered. Behind them, the pounding of hooves cut through the chaos. A lantern swung. A voice barked orders. Sheriff Warren Hale rode into the yard with 2 deputies, faces shielded against the dust. They slowed only when they saw Jed on the ground, the barn aflame, Isaiah bleeding, Rose kneeling beside him. "Enough!" Warren shouted, but there was no outrage in his tone, only calculation. He looked at Isaiah's wound, at Jed's fallen knife, at the burnt ring in Rose's hand, at the barn collapsing in flame. He didn't order arrests, didn't help the fire, didn't ask who started what. He just stared, and something cold passed over his face, a decision made in silence. "This won't end tonight," Warren said, low enough only those closest heard it. Rose felt Isaiah sway beside her. He pressed a hand to his side, breath hitching, but his eyes stayed locked on the sheriff, and the sheriff turned away. As he rode off, firelight caught his badge one last time before the dust swallowed him. Rose looked at the burned ring in her palm, then at Isaiah's blood. Something inside her settled, not calm, not certainty, but a direction. A stand she knew she had to make. "Isaiah," she whispered, voice shaking. "We can't survive another night like this unless we tell the truth." The storm howled across the ranch, rattling every loose hinge and burning ember. Isaiah closed his eyes, breathing through the pain. "Then tomorrow, we tell it." The wind swallowed the rest. Night settled heavy over Cole's Creek Ranch, thicker than the smoke still clinging to the broken fence posts. The storm had passed, but the world felt hollowed out by what it left behind. The barn smoldered in the dark, ribs of charred wood glowing faintly like dying coals. Inside the cabin, Isaiah lowered himself into a chair with a tight, breathless wince. One hand pressed hard against his bandaged side. Rose lit the fire the way she'd seen him do it. Slow, patient, coaxing flame from ember as though asking it for permission. When it caught, a warm glow spread through the room, pushing shadows to the walls. She sat across from him, hands clasped so tight her knuckles whitened. Neither spoke. The ticking of the mantel clock filled the quiet. Steady, slow, like a heartbeat refusing to stop even though everything else felt broken. Isaiah's breaths dragged in and out. He wasn't dying, not yet, but the wound had drained every bit of strength from him. Rose watched sweat bead at his brow and felt guilt twist like a knife in her chest. She wished she could take the pain for him, or at least understand it, but she had no right to wish anything. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her coat pocket. A folded, worn paper brushed her palm. She hesitated, fighting the instinct to tuck it away again, let it rot in the dark like she had for years. Isaiah noticed. "Rose?" His voice was a low scrape. She swallowed. "There's something you need to see." Her hands shook harder as she laid the paper on the table between them. Firelight brushed across it, revealing the faded stamp, the creases, the ink she once prayed would vanish. Isaiah stared at it, then at her. "What is that?" Her voice quivered. "The reason I don't deserve your help." She opened it slowly. The paper crackled, like it resisted her touch. Isaiah leaned forward, his face tightening as he read her name, the accusation, the sworn statement, the signature. A man falsely accused, a mob that didn't wait, a rope. Rose's silence. Her breath shuddered. "I knew he didn't do it. Everyone knew. But they shoved the paper at me, said if I didn't sign, I'd be next. I signed anyway." Her voice cracked. "I told myself I had no choice, but the truth is, I was afraid. I let fear kill him." Isaiah's jaw clenched. His hand gripped the armrest hard enough his knuckles showed through soot. Rose bowed her head. "If you want me gone, say it. I won't argue." Silence stretched thin, thin enough to tear. Isaiah reached toward the paper, but didn't pick it up. He stared at the words, at the trembling curl of her signature. "When Hannah was dying," he said, voice low, "I stood there and didn't move. I thought the sheriff would come. I thought someone would. I didn't fight hard enough. I didn't stop them." His eyes glimmered. Quiet, exhausted grief. "If I can't forgive myself for that," he whispered, "how could I ever forgive anyone else?" Rose's breath hitched. She looked up. "Isaiah." He held out his hand. "Give it to me." Her fingers brushed his as she passed the paper over. Isaiah stared at it once more, then at the flames. He let it fall. The edges curled instantly. Ink bled. The fire swallowed the confession, the signature, the years she'd carried like chains. When it finally turned to ash, drifting up the chimney's dark throat, Rose felt something loosen inside her. Painful, necessary, terrifying. Isaiah leaned back, every movement slow with hurt, and whispered, "We tell the truth tomorrow. All of it." Rose wiped tears from her chin. "Together?" His gaze softened. "Together." Outside, the last embers of the barn cracked and fell. Sparks drifting upward like fireflies. Tiny pieces of the night refusing to stay dark. But inside the cabin, the flames burned steady, warm, unafraid. Morning came slow over the valley, dragging a pale, hesitant light across the charred remains of the barn. Smoke thinned in the cold air, curling in tired ribbons above blackened beams. Rose had barely slept, her body shaking from everything the storm had taken, and everything it had forced her to face. Isaiah stood beside the wagon, moving carefully, one hand pressed to the bandage beneath his shirt. "You're hurting," she murmured. He managed a breath of a smile. "Pain means I'm still here." She helped him climb onto the wagon seat, her hands lingering longer than needed, as if afraid he might slip away if she let go too soon. When she settled beside him, he flicked the reins, and the horse began the slow journey into town. The road felt heavier than ever before. Dust hung in the air, stirred by wheels that creaked beneath them. Neither spoke, both rehearsing words they didn't want to say. As Red Hollow came into view, the church bell rang. Once, twice, 3 times. A summons, a warning, a promise. People turned their heads as the wagon passed, whispering, watching, judging. That's Kellen's girl. Why's she with him? Here the ranch burned last night. Rose kept her chin tucked, fingers gripping the seat until her knuckles paled. Isaiah stared forward, jaw set, shoulders square with quiet resolve. They pulled beside the church just as the last congregants filed in. Isaiah stepped down, breath catching as pain ripped across his side. Rose reached for him without thinking. "Lean on me," she whispered. He didn't argue. Inside the church, warmth pressed against tension. The smell of polished wood, old hymn books, secrets that had settled longer than dust. Whispering rippled through the pews like wind through dry grass. Rate 80%. That's her. Man's a fool taking her in. Sheriff said the ranch burned. Isaiah lowered himself into the front pew. Rose sat beside him, hands trembling in her lap. The pastor delivered a short sermon, too short, a prelude to the storm settling inside the walls. When he stepped back, Isaiah rose. The entire room inhaled at once. "I need to speak," he said. The pastor stepped aside. Isaiah faced the congregation, one hand braced on the pew to stay upright. "Last night, my ranch was attacked. Men under Bart Kellen set fire to my barn and tried to take Rose Bennett by force. Gasps rippled like a struck chord. I paid her debt," Isaiah said, "but Bart wants more than what she owed. He wants my land." Murmurs, shock, the beginning of truth. "He forged the numbers on my mortgage." Isaiah's voice darkened. "The sheriff knew and let him." Sheriff Warren stiffened, jaw tight, but said nothing. Isaiah's next words fell like a hammer. "This town knows what Bart has done. Maybe you told yourselves it wasn't your business. Maybe it was easier to look away." He paused. "So did I, once. And a woman I loved paid the price." Silence swallowed the room. Isaiah sat, breath trembling. Rose rose to her feet. Her legs shook. Her palms sweated. Her throat burned. But she stood. "I have something to say, too," she whispered. Dozens of faces turned toward her, some curious, some accusing, some afraid. "Years ago, in Black Creek," her voice wavered, "a man was accused of a crime he didn't commit. I was forced to sign a statement saying I saw him do it. He died because I signed." A stunned murmur rippled through the church. I told myself I had no choice. But the truth is, I let fear steer my hand. Tears fell, unhidden. I won't stay silent anymore. Not about that. Not about what Bart Kellen has done. Not about the sheriff helping him hurt people. Sheriff Warren stepped forward, voice strained. "Rose, you're speaking dangerous words." Another voice rose behind him. "I'll speak 'em too." Eli Turner stood. Young, shaking, knuckles raw, dust still clinging to his hair. "I was with Jed last night," he said loudly. "I heard Bart say he'd take Cole's ranch even if he had to burn it down." Sheriff knew. Sheriff said nothing. Gasps, rage, fear. The church trembled with it. Bart shot to his feet. "You lying little—" "Sit down," the pastor snapped, firmer than anyone had ever heard him. The pastor reached into his coat and withdrew a sealed envelope. "This arrived yesterday from the county judge," he said. "A full investigation into every debt enforced by Bart Kellen. Effective immediately. The sheriff is to suspend all collections." The room erupted, voices clashing like storm winds. The pastor lifted his hand. "Sheriff Warren, until the review is complete, you are relieved of duty." Warren said nothing, didn't defend himself, simply removed the star from his vest, placed it on the communion table, and walked out beneath a torrent of whispers. Bart stood alone, color draining from his face. Isaiah watched him with a quiet that felt dangerous, not vengeful, honest. Rose exhaled, something shifting inside her. Not hope, but close. The pastor stepped back. Let truth do its work. Isaiah reached for Rose's hand beneath the pew. She let her fingers slip into his, feeling the warmth, the steadiness. Time 1000. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time, they weren't standing alone. Autumn sunlight fell soft and gold across Red Hollow, the morning the traveling judge arrived. Folks gathered outside the church-turned-courthouse, boots scuffing the dirt. Coats tugged tight against the chilly breeze rolling down from the hills. The whole town buzzed with something uneasy, half fear, half relief, like people waiting years for a truth they weren't sure they wanted. Rose and Isaiah walked together, slow, steady. His steps were careful, one hand braced to the wound at his side, but his back stayed straight, refusing to bow under any man's threat. Rose walked half a step behind, nerves knotting her breath. Her fingers curled tight around the burned wedding ring in her pocket, the metal still warped, still warm with memory. Inside, the judge sat at the front. Small wooden chair, papers neatly stacked. Not a large man, not loud, but his gaze carried a firmness that settled the whole room. A long, pale scar cut across his cheek, a hint he'd seen more justice lost than won. "We'll begin," he said, voice gravelly, clear. Bart Kellen stood with his lawyer, sweat already purling at his temples. Sheriff Warren, stripped of badge, sat 2 rows back, eyes fixed on the floorboards. Eli Turner sat near the aisle, twisting his hat in nervous hands. Rose and Isaiah took the front bench, side by side. The judge lifted the first paper. Rose Bennett. Your contract of labor submitted by Bart Kellen. Do you confirm this is your signature? Rose nodded, throat tight. Yes, sir. Were you forced to sign it? Her voice wavered, but held. Yes. I signed under threat. The judge's eyes flicked toward Bart. Threat of what? Rose swallowed. Violence, death. A gasp rippled through the room. Bart lunged forward. That's a lie. The judge raised a hand. You'll speak when asked, Mr. Kellen. And you were sold twice? He asked Rose. Yes. And beaten? She hesitated only a breath. Many times. The judge set the paper aside. Soft thud, final. That contract, he said, is hereby void. Bart lurched. You can't. I just did, the judge replied calmly. Relief rippled through Rose, small at first, then widening like warmth from a lit stove. Isaiah's hand brushed her knee, gentle, steady. A quiet, you're not alone. The judge lifted the next document. Isaiah Cole, he said, did you knowingly agree to these terms? Isaiah rose, voice steady despite the pain. I agreed to the original terms, not what's written there. The judge traced a finger down the page. This interest rate is 3 times the legal limit. He tapped another number. And this line is written in different ink. A hush fell heavy as an anvil. Bart's lawyer cleared his throat. Clerical error, nothing more. The judge's stare didn't move. Clerical errors do not benefit only one party. He set the paper aside. This mortgage is null. Cole's Creek Ranch remains the property of Isaiah Cole. Isaiah exhaled, slow, deep, like a man stepping out from the shadow of a long, cold night. Rose pressed her lips together, blinking against fresh tears. Then came Eli. The boy stood, trembling, hat crushed in his hands. "Tell us what you witnessed the night of the fire," the judge said. Eli swallowed. Bart ordered Jed and the others to burn Cole's barn. Said if the girl died in it, it'd be bad luck but convenient. The room erupted. Outrage, denial, fear spilling over like breaking dam water. The judge slammed his palm down. Level moderate. Order. Silence returned. The judge fixed Bart with a stare colder than river ice. You will stand trial in the county seat for fraud, assault, and conspiracy. He turned to Warren. Sheriff Warren Hale, for your part in these matters, you will face charges of dereliction of duty and aiding unlawful acts. Warren didn't look surprised, only tired. Bart shouted, voice cracking, You can't take my town. It was never yours, the judge said quietly. Deputies seized Bart. He fought like a cornered wolf until 3 men pinned him and dragged him into sunlight. The room sagged into one long exhale. The judge turned back to Isaiah and Rose, expression softening just a fraction. One more matter, he said. Cole's Creek Ranch. Does it need a co-signer? Isaiah stiffened, surprised, hope and fear flickering in his gaze. He turned to Rose, silent question in his eyes. If she'll have me, he said softly, I'd like her name beside mine. Not as debt, not as property, as choice. Rose felt her heart thrum painfully. Then she nodded. Once. Firm. Clear. Isaiah's shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. The judge wrote their names side by side on a clean deed. Ink smooth and final. He handed it to Isaiah. Consider this the start of something better. Isaiah accepted it with a quiet, reverent breath. Rose's fingers brushed the edge of the paper, and for a heartbeat, the whole room stilled. It wasn't land. It wasn't freedom. It was a life. Together, evening settled quietly over Cole's Creek Ranch. The kind of evening that asked for nothing except a long breath and a place to rest it. The rebuilt fences ran straight along the field, still smelling of fresh-cut pine. Smoke lifted gently from the chimney of the cabin. Thin, blue, harmless. For the first time in weeks, the land wasn't carrying the weight of fear. Isaiah pushed the cabin door open with his shoulder, careful of his healing ribs. Rose followed him in, brushing dust from her skirt. Warm air met them. cedar wood, and stew simmering slow on the stove. The fire in the hearth glowed soft and steady. No roar, no crackling battle, just warmth. "That smells like supper," Isaiah said, lowering himself into the chair closest to the fire. "You've been outside too long," Rose replied. "You're pale." "Weather's changin'," he murmured. "Has a way of pulling old aches to the surface." She didn't argue, just ladled stew into 2 bowls, setting one in front of him. Their hands brushed. A quiet touch. Lingering. A heartbeat longer than an accident should. Isaiah's gaze drifted toward the mantel. Resting there was the twisted, blackened ring. Hannah's ring. The last piece of a life carved deep inside him. He stared a long moment before looking away. Rose noticed. "I can move it somewhere else," she said softly. "If it hurts to see." Isaiah shook his head. "It doesn't hurt. Not the way it used to. It's just a part of the story now." Rose drew a slow breath, reached into her pocket, held something out to him. A small silver band, polished bright, engraved on the inside. Isaiah and Rose, New Waters. He didn't touch it at first, just stared, eyes softening in a way that tightened her chest. "I'm not asking you to forget her," Rose whispered. "I just think we deserve something that's ours." Isaiah lifted the ring. Careful fingers, reverent touch. Firelight found it, turning the metal warm. "New Waters," he murmured. "A better place to start." "If you want it," Rose breathed. He slipped the ring onto his finger. "I do." The room changed then. Not brighter, not fuller, just steadier. Like the walls exhaled. Like the world outside stopped pacing for a while. A knock sounded. Sharp, familiar. Before Rose could stand, the door opened and Eli Turner stepped inside. Hat in hand, hair wind-blown, carrying shadows from the night Isaiah saved him. "Sorry to bother," he mumbled. I brought something." He held up a saddle, a new one, dark leather, clean stitching, buckle polished bright. "Made it myself," Eli said. "Figured Coles Creek might need a good start. Same as you two." Isaiah blinked, surprised. "That's good work, Eli." The boy flushed. "If you're hiring for the long season, I'd like to earn my keep here. Learn to be better." Isaiah looked at Rose. Rose gave a small, sure nod. "You stay," Isaiah said. "Long as you want." Eli let out a breath he'd been holding for days. "Thank you, sir." He hung the saddle by the door and slipped out into the cooling dusk. The sky outside deepened to lavender. A few stars pushing through the fabric of twilight. From the yard, the creek whispered soft, steady, like the land itself humming an old tune. Rose sat beside Isaiah, chairs angled toward the fire. For a long time, neither spoke. The crackle of wood, the whisper of wind, Isaiah's slow, steady breath. Together, they said everything. Isaiah reached across the space between them, palm open. Rose placed her hand in his. Through the window behind them, the cabin glowed. One bright, golden square against the darkening land. A promise. A beacon. Isaiah squeezed her hand gently. Whatever comes next, we face it here. Together. Rose leaned her head against his shoulder, letting fatigue and peace settle in equal measure. Together, she whispered. Outside, night wrapped the ranch in quiet. The creek whispered on. The horses stirred softly in their rebuilt shelter. Eli's silhouette crossed the yard, carrying hay, humming off key. Inside the cabin, the fire held steady, and the golden window shone, stubborn, warm, unafraid, into the vast western dark. As the dust settles over Cole's Creek Ranch, we're reminded that compassion can rebuild what violence tried to destroy. Isaiah, Rose, and young Eli now share a home shaped not by blood, but by courage, forgiveness, and chosen family. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share a comment below and tell us which moment stayed with you. And if you enjoyed this tale of second chances, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Your support keeps these Western stories alive for all of us. Evening settled quietly over Cole's Creek Ranch. The kind of evening that asked for nothing except a long breath and a place to rest it. The rebuilt fences ran straight along the field, still smelling of fresh-cut pine. Smoke lifted gently from the chimney of the cabin. Thin, blue, harmless. For the first time in weeks, the land wasn't carrying the weight of fear. Isaiah pushed the cabin door open with his shoulder, careful of his healing ribs. Rose followed him in, brushing dust from her skirt. Warm air met them, cedar wood and stew simmering slow on the stove. The fire in the hearth glowed soft and steady. No roar, no crackling battle, just warmth. "That smells like supper," Isaiah said, lowering himself into the chair closest to the fire. "You've been outside too long," Rose replied. "You're pale." "Weather's changin'," he murmured. "Has a way of pulling old aches to the surface." She didn't argue, just ladled stew into 2 bowls, setting one in front of him. Their hands brushed. A quiet touch. Lingering. A heartbeat longer than an accident should. Isaiah's gaze drifted toward the mantel. Resting there was the twisted, blackened ring. Hannah's ring. The last piece of a life carved deep inside him. He stared a long moment before looking away. Rose noticed. "I can move it somewhere else," she said softly. "If it hurts to see." Isaiah shook his head. "It doesn't hurt. Not the way it used to. It's just a part of the story now." Rose drew a slow breath, reached into her pocket, held something out to him. A small silver band, polished bright, engraved on the inside. Isaiah and Rose, New Waters. He didn't touch it at first, just stared, eyes softening in a way that tightened her chest. "I'm not asking you to forget her," Rose whispered. I just think we deserve something that's ours. Isaiah lifted the ring. Careful fingers, reverent touch. Firelight found it, turning the metal warm. New waters, he murmured. A better place to start. If you want it, Rose breathed. He slipped the ring onto his finger. I do. The room changed then. Not brighter, not fuller, just steadier. Like the walls exhaled. Like the world outside stopped pacing for a while. A knock sounded. Sharp, familiar. Before Rose could stand, the door opened and Eli Turner stepped inside. Hat in hand, hair wind-blown, carrying shadows from the night Isaiah saved him. Sorry to bother, he mumbled. I brought something. He held up a saddle, a new one, dark leather, clean stitching, buckle polished bright. Made it myself, Eli said. Figured Coles Creek might need a good start. Same as you two. Isaiah blinked, surprised. That's good work, Eli. The boy flushed. If you're hiring for the long season, I'd like to earn my keep here. Learn to be better. Isaiah looked at Rose. Rose gave a small, sure nod. You stay, Isaiah said. Long as you want. Eli let out a breath he'd been holding for days. Thank you, sir. He hung the saddle by the door and slipped out into the cooling dusk. The sky outside deepened to lavender. A few stars pushing through the fabric of twilight. From the yard, the creek whispered soft, steady, like the land itself humming an old tune. Rose sat beside Isaiah,